Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today. If you're currently navigating the massive, kind of overwhelming maze of higher education options, you know exactly how tough it is to map out a career path. One that actually balances deep technical expertise with high-level business acumen. Well, today, we're diving into a really fascinating academic track that attempts to do exactly that. We're looking at Nirma University's 5-year integrated B.Tech in computer science and engineering, plus an MBA program. We're going to unpack the hard data, the curriculum structure, and the real-world outcomes to see how this dual degree really operates. But first, let me ask you a question that honestly might just hit right at your biggest academic anxiety. Do you really want an MBA, but you're absolutely dreading the stress and uncertainty of the CAT exam? For so many aspiring management professionals in India, the common admission test is, well, it's a grueling bottleneck. It takes months, literally sometimes years of prep, usually while you're juggling a demanding undergrad degree or a full-time job. But what if there was a way to just lock in your spot in a rigorous MBA program before you even write your first line of college code? Because that is exactly the premise of the program we're exploring today. Okay, let's dive into the syllabus. We're going to cover 1. The fast-track dual degree, 2. From code to corporate, 3. The placement payoff, 4. Weighing pros and cons, and finally, 5. The final verdict. Kicking things off with Section 1, Fast-Track Dual Degree, looking at admission and program basics. So the foundational numbers here are actually pretty striking. It's a 5-year, full-time dual degree track. But here's the kicker, and this is wild. There are only 60 total seats available. I mean, think about that for a second. In a country where literally hundreds of thousands of students go after engineering every single year, a cohort of 60 is incredibly boutique. It's highly exclusive. Plus, there is absolutely zero state quota here. Admission is wide open to the All India category and NRIs, so you're basically competing on a national level for a very, very tiny handful of spots. So how on earth do they choose those 60 students? Well, as you'd expect for a premium engineering track, 50% of your admission relies entirely on your JEE main score. But look at that massive 30% chunk dedicated to a personal interview, right alongside 20% for your past academic performance. Now, for a typical B.Tech, interviews are super rare, but Nirma throws in this heavy 30% interview weightage because they aren't just looking for pure coders. They're actively scouting for 17 and 18-year-olds who already show the raw communication skills, the leadership potential, and the personality traits you absolutely need to thrive in an MBA environment just a few years down the line. Moving right along to Section 2. From code to corporate, let's understand this curriculum shift. Let's map out the timeline and see how this builds across the 5 years, because the journey is split into some very distinct phases. For the first 3 years, you are, for all intents and purposes, a straight-up engineering student. This is the core B.Tech CSE phase. But that big jump into management, it doesn't just happen overnight. The bridge between these two worlds actually happens during the summer after your 3rd year. You don't get a break. Instead, you do mandatory summer internships and a highly intensive 9-week field or social project. It totally grounds your technical knowledge in real-world application. Then, for years 4 and 5, the training wheels come off. You enter the fully residential MBA phase, entirely immersed in the Management Institute. So in phase 1, you're really in the trenches of computer science. You're mastering coding, untangling complex data structures, optimizing algorithms, managing databases, the whole shebang. It is highly technical and extremely analytical. But the moment you hit phase 2, the whole pedagogy flips on its head. You essentially trade your algorithms for corporate strategy, finance, marketing, and leadership. And it's not just the subjects changing, the entire teaching style shifts to a corporate case study methodology. You aren't just solving math equations anymore, you're actually solving real business crises. Which brings us to Section 3, the placement payoff. Let's talk about the return on investment. Look, you don't endure 5 years of grueling dual-discipline academic pressure just for the fun of it, right? It's completely natural to wonder what the ultimate payoff for this grind actually looks like. What happens when you finally step off campus with both of those degrees in your hand? Well, the data speaks for itself, and it speaks pretty loudly. Recent batch reports show a bold 100% placement rate for this specific integrated track. Yep, you heard that right. Every single student in this boutique cohort of 60 who sits for placements through the final year MBA pool is locking in a corporate role. That level of certainty is incredibly rare, and it really speaks volumes about how the industry views this specific combo of skills. Now, 100% placement rate is awesome, obviously, but the financial breakdown and the actual caliber of the recruiters are what really stand out here. To put it in perspective, the median package sits at a really solid 9.5 locks per annum, with the average hovering right around 10.5 LPA. And check out who's doing the hiring. Amazon, Bloomberg, Microsoft. I mean, these aren't just your standard IT service recruiters. We're talking about global tech titans. They are actively hunting for talent in this MBA pool because they know these graduates have a remarkably rare hybrid skill set. Because these grads bridge that crucial gap between actual technical software deployment and high-level business strategy, they get to completely bypass those entry-level coding jobs. Instead, they're stepping right into highly lucrative techno-managerial titles. We're talking about roles like product manager, where you're overseeing the entire life cycle of a software product, or a technology consultant advising huge businesses on their IT infrastructure, or a business analyst, literally translating data into actionable corporate strategy. At this level, you aren't just writing the code. You're the one deciding what code needs to be written to actually make the business profitable. Okay, let's get into Section 4, weighing pros and cons. Time for the reality check. First things first, we've got to talk about the heavy financial reality. Total tuition fees for this 5-year program surpass 2.3 million rupees. That is 23 lakhs. And you've got to understand, that figure is strictly for tuition. It completely excludes the cost of hostels, utilities, and just daily living expenses over half a decade. So, yeah, it is a massive financial investment that requires some really serious consideration by you and your family. Now, on the pros side, the advantages are just undeniable. You save an entire year of your life compared to doing a standard 4-year B.Tech followed by a 2-year MBA. Plus, you completely bypass the immense, crazy stress of the CAT exam, and you get access to top-tier, modern labs and libraries. But the cons are equally weighty. The absolute biggest risk? There is no lateral exit. Unlike some programs where you can, just drop out after 3 years with a standard degree, here, the 4th-year engineering components are basically replaced by MBA modules. So if you change your mind in year 3, too bad, you are locked in. Add to that the high cost, a notoriously rigid 85% attendance policy that will absolutely test your coffee tolerance, and a surprising lack of standard on-campus housing for undergraduate boys, which basically means you'll be getting a crash course in apartment hunting right on top of managing your dual degrees. Finally, Section 5, the final verdict. Who is this really for? So the crucial takeaway here is this. This program is basically a career cheat code, but only if you fit a very, very specific profile. It's highly recommended if you are already certain at age 18 that you definitely want a corporate managerial or consulting career within the IT domain. If your goal is to manage the tech and not just build it, this is a phenomenal fast track. However, actually, it's way safer to skip this and just opt for a standard 4-year B.Tech if your primary love is pure uninterrupted coding. Or if you want to be a core hands-on software engineer. Or, if you just want to keep the door wide open for a master's degree abroad. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought as you weigh your options. Are you ultimately aiming for a seat in the corporate boardroom, dictating tech strategy and managing teams? Or does your heart truly belong right there in the trenches of pure code, building the digital architecture of the future from scratch? Honestly, answering that question is going to tell you exactly if this 5-year dual degree is your perfect match. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today. I really hope this deep dive brought you some totally clear perspective. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.